Whoa, that's a pretty weird circuit. It doesn't look like it's like some weird diamond triangle thing. I don't know. I can't really combine it into like like I can't really do series or parallel stuff. It looks really complicated. You can use Kirchhoff's laws to analyze this circuit. So Kirchhoff, probably an electrician or something. I don't know. He was probably a physicist. He thought of these two laws and or rules, and they're used in circuits: the junction rule and the voltage rule. And I'll talk about both of them, how you use it, and what it's really saying. So the junction rule, this one is pretty intuitive in my opinion. Like it's not like a crazy idea or anything. All it's really saying is that for any current that is entering a junction, right? For any current entering a junction, I was saying, what's a junction? A junction is like a point in a circuit that branches out with three different like paths. So right here would be a junction, right? Because you have one path going in, two coming out. Junction rule says that the current coming into a junction will end up equaling the current coming out of the junction. So there's a certain amount of current coming into this junction. It's going to split. And let's call this I1, I0, let's call this I1, I2. Junction rule tells us that, hey, this current will end up equaling the sum of these two currents. Whatever current is coming into the junction is going to equal the current coming out of it. And that's pretty cool, right? Like that's important. This law is really just a conservation of charge principle, right? What is current? It is just moving charge. This battery is causing charge to move. And this moving charge, once it reaches a junction, it has to go somewhere, right? Like if there's current coming into it, the only way the current's going to go is current coming out of it. So it's some of the current will go here, the rest better go on the other junction, right? There's no other option. Charge has to go somewhere. It's conserved. So we can use junction rule, and it's pretty helpful, right? I'm going to talk about the voltage law next, and then maybe we can look at the circuit some more. Talk about especially like this middle resistor, right? Which way does current flow? So voltage law tells us that, what does voltage law tell us? It tells us something pretty important. Voltage law tells us that, why am I blinking? Sorry. Voltage law tells us that the sum, okay, well, it's also called the loop rule. Here's the deal. You can make a loop within this circuit, right? So, for example, I can make a loop consisting of, and I can draw it maybe with the red. Here, I'll do it like this. So if this is my circuit, right, I can make a bunch of loops. What's a loop? Well, one example of a loop would be like so. So I've just kind of ignored these three resistors. I'm looking at the loop that is like this, right? So what I can gather from that is that the sum of all the voltages around this loop will always end up equaling 0. Or in other words, the sum of all the potential differences is going to equal 0 volts, right? So what is the potential difference across this circuit? Well, let's say you start here at some potential, I don't know, some potential V. It doesn't really matter, honestly, because you're going to see if you start at a potential V, going through the battery will increase your potential, right? Just like a roller coaster getting you up to a higher gravitational potential, working against the gravitational field to get you up higher, a battery will get you to a higher potential, even though I guess, it will get you to a higher potential. So it gets you to a higher potential, and that increase in potential is going to be positive EMF, or like whatever the battery voltage is. And then when you go down this resistor, right, the current is going to flow like so. And down that resistor, you're going to be like, hey, I'm getting a potential drop. That resistor, right, if I'm a charge and I'm at a certain potential, I'm going to have potential energy. And if I have potential energy is, I need to understand energy in a circuit a little bit more. But I have some energy, and that resistor uses that energy, and it drops my potential. And I call that drop in potential, I don't know, negative V1. And then this resistor will also drop my potential all the way back down to not 0 volts. And I'm not saying my potential after the second resistor is 0. It's just back to whatever potential I started with. The total change in potential across that loop was 0. Why does this make sense? Well, hey, this is really just a conservation of energy statement. Well, how nuts would it be if I started here and then after this loop, I got back to a high, like I somehow had a positive, like, I don't know, positive V volt, like potential difference increase or potential increase, whatever. That's violating conservation of energy. I'm getting potential out of nowhere. It's not possible. I'm getting potential out of nowhere. That's kind of violating conservation of energy. So my sum would always be 0. And I'm not losing any either, right? I'm back to where I started. So, hey, that's pretty cool. That's loop rule for you. And here's a nutty part. It works for any loop. So I can change my loop. So maybe this is loop 1. I can make a loop 2. And this loop 2 could consist of, heck, it could consist of these 2 resistors. And I'm just disregarding the other 3. I can make a loop of these resistors. I can make a loop of a kind of like this cool little, I can make a loop like that. I can make any kind of closed loop as long as it's like a closed loop. So I can't really go like, I can't just stop right here. I would have to continue my loop back to where I started. But loop rule applies here. If you add up these voltages, that goes like, yeah, if you add up the voltages, then if you add up the voltages, you're gonna get back to 0. That's all. That's really what loop rule is saying. Well, what about a loop like, so I'm gonna get rid of this I1 temporarily. What about a loop like this, right? Consisting of those 3 triangle resistors. Can loop rule still work there? And the answer is yes, it actually can. So, let's draw this loop. So it would be like, wait, no, why am I drawing a battery? It's just those 3 resistors. So a loop like this still follows the voltage law. You might be saying, well, that's impossible, right? Because we know that resistors drop the potential. They don't increase it, they decrease it. Well, if you go through a resistor backwards, that's essentially the same as increasing the potential, right? Because if the potential would be higher, like so let's take a look at this. Let me explain. If I make my loop like this, I'm going to call this resistor 1, 2, and 3. We have a potential drop. If we start here, we have a potential drop from V1. And you'd think, well, hey, there'd be a potential drop at V2. But then you'd be like, okay, well, there's going to be a potential drop at V3. Something's going on, right? So really what's going on is that you're going through resistor 3 backwards. You're going against the direction of the current. So the potential is higher on this side, right? Because you can imagine the current potential is high here, drops a little there, but you're going from low to high. This would be adding a potential, right? Now, V2 might be negative. I need to think about it some more because I guess if you have this loop, There is probably a way to use loop rule to confirm whether the current is going this way or this way, right? You can actually use loop rule to deduce that. I need to think about how. If they're all equal resistors, Ooh, if they're all equal resistors, I don't even know if current will flow through the resistor. Wow, maybe I should leave the video off of that challenge, because I would have to think about it some more. Those were the basic secure cost laws. Thank you for watching. I'm making this video, by the way. I should mention I'm making this video because someone commented for me to make these videos, but also my last secure cost laws video was really chopped, and I think this is just better. So yeah, thank you for watching. Hopefully this was of some help to you.